Welcome back, everyone. This is Austin Reville with 2FC Tactical on our From the Vault series, featuring unique and historical firearms that come through our shop. We're also starting to do shorts, as well as we're going to start getting into reviews and updates, especially on suppressors. So we do want to invite you to check out the different playlists in our channel and go over the Rumble. And if you wouldn't mind, support us on Patreon. We do have a Patreon account that these videos do come out a day early, and it allows us to help upgrade some of our equipment. So far, all the Patreon money we have has gone into this, and will continue to go into this, whether it be our new intros that we have, whether it be the new lighting system I'm employing today to kind of help brighten up the space, the cameras that I bought, or even the new mics, because we did have some massive audio issues there for a while, and I do apologize for that. We are coming from you from the frozen tundra up here in Minnesota. You know, today, December 4th, 2024 is a cold one. It is 8 degrees outside with a minus like 11 with the wind chill, with 40-mile-an-hour winds. So it's quite miserable for a southern boy like myself stuck up here, and I'm sure everyone's going to get a chuckle out of that. I did choose to live here, so yes, it is my own fault, and I decided to put down roots, met my wife, and now run my business here. So we're here to stay, but I'm still going to complain about the cold. In honor of the cold, though, I'm going to rep the University of North Alabama Lions, which is where I went to college and played college football. At the time, it was a D2 school. So it's cold. I'm wearing one of my college sweatshirts, and I'm just happy I fit my college sweatshirts, in all fairness. So shout out to the University of North Alabama for setting me up in life to bring all these things to you. I do want to take a moment to point out the obvious. We have behind us a Smith & Wesson flag. Is that because we're sponsored by Smith & Wesson? Well, for Smith & Wesson out there, or anyone listening that is a part of their organization, we very much would like to be. And yes, this is a shameless plug. Come sponsor our channel. The other reason why it's up there is because there's another flag with a massive circle in the middle of it. I went to a gun show and picked up a Japanese battle flag, and I didn't know how YouTube would feel about that. So that is underneath that one. We replaced one circle with a different circle. And we decided, why not, for our first video featuring the Smith & Wesson flag in the background, a Smith & Wesson firearm, a K-frame revolver. Very excited to get into it. So today, on our From the Vault series, we're going to talk about the Model 10. Sort of. Let's get into that. So this Smith & Wesson Model 10 is a little bit different. This is a 1940s production. I'm still working on dating it exactly. It is towards the end of the run. This is a victory model, or a K-200, or a 38-200 model. There's a couple different ways to designate this particular gun. The reason why this is slightly different than the regular Model 10 is because there is, right on the top, it's kind of faint, a United States property mark right there. And this is really faint, so I don't know if you'll be able to see it. And I'll try to see if I can get a picture of it to have it pop up in here. But there is, on your left-hand side right there, a bomb with a flame on it right in this area. That particular bomb with a flame is a British proof mark. So this particular Model 10 was a part of the Lend-Lease program in World War II. And we should do a Model 10 specific video just about the design and history of the Model 10. But we're going to focus in on this particular version of it and kind of just gloss over the Model 10 history, because I feel like that's a video all on its own, and it deserves its own video. Maybe we'll use this one as a placeholder because we don't currently have one. But for now, let's talk about the Victory model. We will say that the Model 10 was originally designed in 1899. It is still in production today, which makes it pretty incredible, gives it, I should say, a pretty incredible track run for longevity. You have a gun that's 125 years old, still in production. It became famous among police forces in the United States, and it was used all the way up to the 70s and 80s as a standard issue sidearm for many police departments. It did serve in both World Wars. But this particular one is a World War II model. So we're going to talk a little bit about this and how it ended up with the British. With that being said, can't talk about World War II handguns without showing off maybe a few of the competitors or those being used in the field around this one. So we have for you just kind of a plethora of representations of various guns used by different sides, which will kind of highlight the differences and maybe even the detraction of this particular gun. So you got to think of the British as very formal, especially when it comes to their etiquette, especially amongst officers. It is considered a gentleman's position, if you will, and that is reflected in the sidearm of choice for World War II. So the United States is rocking the 1911 pistol. This one's from 1945. This is an Ithaca model. We'll do another Vault series on this particular gun in the future, but this is what the United States has been using since 1911, and we use this all the way up through the 80s until the Beretta M9 came into play, and it's still technically in service in the United States to this day in various smaller combat units. The Germans were rocking the Walther P38 predominantly. Yes, there is the Luger, of course, the famous, infamous Luger, and it is being used, but predominantly it is the Walther P38. This is a 1944 Walther P38. Again, we'll do a From the Vault series on this one at some point in the future. The Russians are rocking the Tokarev pistol. Now this is a Yugoslavian M57. This one is from the 1950s, if I remember correctly. So this is not a Russian-made Tokarev. This is a Yugoslavian post-war made, but it's close to as reputation as I have of that particular pistol. But this is what the Russians are utilizing as their sidearm at the time. Kind of has a 1911 feel to it because that's the gun that they kind of patterned this off of. It does have some similarities to that. So this is chambered in 7.62 by 25 Tokarev. Obviously the 1911 is chambered in 45 ACP. The P38 is chambered in 9mm. And then the Japanese are rocking this gun. Now there is another gun which we will do a From the Vault series on that I do have as well, a Type 96 Nambu. This is the Type 14. This is the predominant one. If it looks somewhat similar to, say, a Ruger Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, that's because this is what they modeled that gun after. But yes, this is the gun that the Japanese are using. And again, another future From the Vault series, absolutely, an 8mm Nambu. So we see everything I pulled out here are semi-auto pistols. And then we have this revolver here. Now, of course, the Russians did have a revolver, and there were other revolvers that certainly saw service during World War II. So this is not to suggest that this is the only revolver that saw service in World War II. That would not be true. There are a multitude. But the British did choose this one somewhat specifically because it is more in line with their tradition. It does feature some pieces on it that are kind of remnants of the old world, if you will. So first off, you right here in the bottom, this little swivel here, you have a lanyard loop. That was so you could attach this to your holster or to your wrist. Now this is an idea that is kind of left over from the horse-drawn cavalry positions in the military of the time. This is something that would still make an appearance, for instance, on the 1911. This 1911 has a lanyard loop for that purpose as well. That's kind of a holdover from the earlier designs. But when you look at, say, the German model and so on and so forth, you're seeing that lanyard loop missing, except for the Japanese. This is an earlier model. It does have it here on the back of the receiver, but you are starting to see these disappear off the pistols themselves as we move forward in time. That's because horse-drawn carriages and horseback cavalry have become a thing of the past. We are entering a mechanized era. But they still featured this particular piece. Some of the differences we'll highlight real quick on this version of the Model 10 versus others would be the grips here. As you can see, they're very smooth. These aren't checkered like you would typically see on the Smith & Wesson. It does feature the Smith & Wesson stamping. It's a little faint on this one, but it is right here. But this is a much more simplistic version of the Model 10. The Moon front sight post is simplified, and some of the cuts on this, I don't know if you can see that. You can still see the machine marks. It's not smoothed out at all. So they basically just kind of scaled back the finishing of this particular version of the Model 10 and then made some of the cuts and some of the grips, just more simplistic. Again, it's a lend-lease. The idea is the British came to the United States saying, we need guns. We can't make enough of them ourselves. We showed you a lend-lease program, which I don't have in this room, I guess, anymore, of the Savage-made Enfield in a previous video. I thought I had that behind me, but I forgot I moved it. Again, same concept. We can't make enough guns to keep up our production. The Germans obviously had the Blitz, which eviscerated a large section of London and the factory productions for the war effort, and they outsourced that to the United States, and we would send it over on our victory ships. Kind of where this victory model comes from. It's kind of a reference to all that. We did get this on loan, meaning that they had to pay back the loan eventually for all these weapon systems that they were buying from us, which they did. It took them a long time, but they eventually did do that. So with these guns, they just simplified the whole Model 10 to make it faster to produce. This does feature a fixed firing pin, very similar to most of the revolvers of the time. It is a 5-cylinder. It is a 5-cylinder gun, and that is really where the limitations of this platform, you could make the argument, is made. This one's a bit sticky when it comes to ejecting the side ramp, and I'm gonna have to take a peek at the reasons why for that. I think one of the rods is kind of stuck in place. I've had a couple of hard time doing that, but it is a 5-round gun. So with that being said, it was a little bit behind compared to what the competition was using. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that, because this was meant as an officer's gentlemanly gun in a lot of ways, and that's what they would have been familiar with too. So there is a reason for this. It's not so much, or I shouldn't say it's not completely on tradition. It is based on, this is what their officers would have been familiar with, the operation of this gun. However, we would see the British use 1911s. We would see that pop up quite a bit, especially in North Africa, as we did a lot of joint operations. So the transition to the semi-auto, which we have seen among both Axis and Allies powers over here, would continue, and eventually the British would come into play full bore on it. This was made to shoot a 200 grain 38 special bullet, a little bit heavier, bigger bullet, with the idea, again, stopping power, just trying to get a little bit more stopping power as opposed to your regular 38 special bullet. That's quite a heavy bullet for this pistol. The accuracy of this pistol is, this particular one I have gotten to shoot. This one, it's a little bit all over the place, and some of that's just the age. Also, I don't have the 200 grain bullet that it was originally designed for. Those are kind of hard to come by. I did shoot, I know I sacrileged, I ended up just shooting a 38 special bullet for it, which is kind of iffy on whether you're supposed to do that. I just did 2 just to test it. I would say this is pretty antiquated by World War II. The truth is, even though the 1911 was designed, 30 years before, 30 years ago, and this one is an 1899 design, so it's not too far off from the 1911. The 1911 really is that forward thinking. It's that far ahead of it. Yes, the ammo, the 45 ACP round, is superior to 38 special. I have an employee named Gary that what I'm about to say he would absolutely have conniption fit over. I'm not a huge revolver guy, so really don't have a lot of revolvers. He really pushed me to get this one when it came in our shop, and to be fair, he was right. He usually is. But when it comes to the sidearms of the time, I would almost choose any one of these, except for the Nambu, the Type 14, over this gun. 7.62 by 25. 7.62 by 25 is a very fast, penetrative round, especially in the handgun. 9mm Luger is tried and true. I mean, most of us carry 9mm to this day as our standard issue sidearms. And 45 ACP is the famous, back-to-back World War champs, right? 45 ACP, nothing, just because I don't want to shoot twice. There's all kinds of funny jokes we make about it, but the truth is, it was an excellent weapon system. This particular weapon system was a bit behind. And when it came to law enforcement, too, there's some real drawbacks to revolvers. We saw throughout the 1920s and 30s, with the rise of organized crime, in the United States with like the Al Capone, Babyface Nelson, Machine Gun Kelly, John Dillinger, where law enforcement equipped with guns like this were outgunned by their criminal counterparts, because they had 1911s, they had Colt pocket pistols. Yes, of course, they had Thompson submachine guns and all these other things. So to be fair, I do think this was behind. However, it did serve a very important purpose, and it was instrumental in winning the war, because the truth was we couldn't have done it without the British. That is true. We used their logistics in order to pull off, say, Normandy, and then Montgomery, who I'm not a fan of. Absolutely not a fan of Montgomery, did do some good things in North Africa. Yes, Patton was better. There's no question about that. But what was not detract from what Montgomery did in North Africa. So in order to get the British up off the mat after the Blitz and get them into the fight to the point where we were all able to conquer the Axis powers, especially in Europe, which is where this saw most of its action, guns like this were instrumental in accomplishing that goal. So we do want to give a shout out to all those who would have carried those on, in different uniforms, like the Canadians, so and the Brits. So we do thank you for coming along and helping us conquer the axis of evil. With that being said, I really do hope you enjoyed learning about this. These were made from 1941 to 1945. You can tell by the import marks. This one does have import marks underneath here, so it was imported back in the United States, despite the fact that it does have made in the USA stamped right here. It left the country. It has the British proof marks. There's a V in the front of the serial number, and the serial number starts roughly in the 94,000 range. And goes up to like the 98,000 range. This is a 97,000 serial number, which means it's toward the end of the run of the Victory model. And they would cease production once the war was won. And the British would go on to adopt other revolvers and sidearms in the post-World War II era. But I appreciate you tuning in and learning a little bit about these. And yes, we will get to these. Don't worry. We have lots more to bring you guys. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until next time.